So what or who do you worship? Well, it's easy to say God, of course, but are you really worshiping anything else or something else? How can you tell? Jesus said, worship only God. Good morning and welcome to 755 Live. For about 5 minutes, you'll hear all about easy to remember soundbite versions of what Jesus said. And the point is to help you experience life to the fullest, the Jesus way. Today's Jesus Said comes from Matthew 4 and 10. And the context here, this is Jesus being tempted in the wilderness by the adversary. So we'll start with verse 10 and then we'll read some context. Matthew 4:10, then Jesus said to him, to the adversary, the enemy, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, you are to worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Now, we'll get to what Jesus quoted there in a minute, but let's read this whole thing in context here. Matthew 4, 8 through 11. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their grandeur. And he said to him, "I will give you all these things if you throw yourself to the ground and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, you are to worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and began ministering to his needs. There is a worship war going on. And we talked this morning in early morning prayer about the memory verse this week. If you follow our Bible plan at bible.today.church, it's Ephesians 6:12. And that was kind of the focus of our prayer time, where it says, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavens." Now we see Jesus confronting Satan himself, and this war that he fought with Satan was about who you worship. There is a worship war going on. And how did Jesus fight? Well, he fought with it is written. But it's not just about the words written, it's about what we do with the words. And we can see this fight against principalities and powers also mentioned in Colossians 2, 14 and 15, where it says that he, being Jesus, has destroyed what was against us, a certificate of indebtedness expressed in decrees opposed to us. He has taken it away by nailing it to the cross. Now, what he's talking about there before we go to verse 15 is the indebtedness of sin. The wages of sin is death. The law states that, and Jesus overcame that. How did he do that? Disarming the rulers and authorities in verse 15. He has made a public disgrace of them, triumphing over them by the cross. He destroyed rulers and powers by the cross. But we're also told in Hebrews 5 that Jesus overcame because he learned obedience through the things that he suffered. Part of that suffering and learning obedience was his temptation in the wilderness. And the adversary says, "Hey, you can have all this stuff." And Jesus said, "No, it is written, worship only God." And Jesus obeyed that, even with the things that he suffered. Now, what Jesus quoted here was from Deuteronomy 6. And in verse 10, it says, "Then when the Lord your God brings you to the land he promised your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, a land with large, fine cities that you did not build, houses filled with choice things you did not accumulate, hewn out cisterns you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant, and you eat your fill." So unpacking this is basically saying, don't take the credit for the good stuff in your life. And then goes on to say what Jesus quoted, worship only God. He says, be careful not to forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, that place of slavery. You must revere the Lord your God, serve him, and take oaths using his name only. Revere and serve him. Worship only God. That's worship. And how does that work? Well, through obedience. You must not go after other gods, those of the surrounding peoples. For the Lord your God, who is present among you, is a jealous God, and his anger will erupt against you and remove you from the land. Worship wins, but we must be careful not to forget God. And we must be careful not to take credit for the good stuff in our lives. When the adversary comes to us and says, hey, you can have all of this stuff, we should choose obedience instead. That's how we know if we're really worshiping God. It's not about showing up once a week. It's about showing up every day in obedience. Jesus said, worship only God. What are you worshiping? What are you serving and revering? How can you put worshiping only God into action today? Thank you so much for listening. If this is meaningful to you, it really means a lot. If you like it, if you share it, if you comment, I read those and I appreciate you. I hope that you have an amazing day, and I hope this time together has helped you live life to the fullest, the Jesus way. And remember to follow Jesus today. Love first.